Good afternoon, my name is Hank McFarland. I'm the Class A head golf professional here at Lochland Country Club. And we're going to give you a series of 3 lessons here that are going to help you as a golfer become a better ball striker. Basically, after these 3 lessons, I honestly don't think you'll ever need another one, because what we're going to do is we're going to give you all the information you need to go out and practice to become a better golfer. Getting better at golf is more about getting the bat on the ball a lot than it is thinking about it or necessarily techniques. Sometimes those help, sometimes those don't. But if you have the basic fundamentals down correctly and you're able to repeat those fundamentals many times, that is your best opportunity to become a good golfer. So if you can have all these funky lessons that teach you all these strange positions, that may or may not do you any good. But if you know the fundamentals and you go out and practice those fundamentals repeatedly, you'll have a much better chance of becoming a better golfer. Okay? So the first thing is that's the grip, how we hold on to the club. It's our only connection to the golf club, and therefore it's perhaps the most important thing in golf. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's boring, but it is the most important thing. If you hold onto the golf club properly, you have a much better chance of striking the ball well and consistently. If you don't hold onto the club properly, then you're always going to have problems. In the golf swing, problems come in pairs. If you make a mistake in some way, shape, or form, you have to make a mistake during the golf swing to compensate for that original mistake. So, that being said, if you have an improper grip, you have to have an improper swing to get the ball airborne and towards your target. So let's start with fundamentals and get you holding on to that club properly before you even start taking swings. Okay, the first thing we have to understand is 83% of where the golf ball goes is where this face is pointing at impact. If the face comes up and is pointing to the right, 83% of the directional component of that ball is going right. If it comes into the ball, it's facing left, 83% of that directional component going left is due to this face angle. So, to hold onto it properly, we have to make sure that the face is dead square to our target, because we want the face dead square at the target when it meets the golf ball. So, if I set my golf ball up on a line, before I take my grip, I want to set my club face at a perpendicular angle to my target line. If I set up with my face open or closed and then take my grip, well, I've already made that first mistake. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my club down behind the golf ball at a 90-degree angle to my target line. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top hand. All these instructions will be for a right-handed golfer, so just flip-flop them if you're a lefty. With my top hand or my left hand, I want the thumb of my left hand just barely on the right side of center. We never want to have our thumb down the top. We want to have our thumb, if you imagine the grip as a clock, the top of the grip being noon, the bottom of the grip being 6. If I'm looking down at that clock, I want my left thumb to be pointing at about 1 or 1:30. I'm going to point my thumb down that shaft. I'm going to wrap around the fingers to my shaft, and as you can see here on my glove, I have a red arrow. That red arrow, it goes right between the crack of my thumb and my index finger knuckle. That arrow should point up somewhere between my right ear and my right shoulder. If that is pointing past my right shoulder or at my chin, I'm already in trouble and I've just made a mistake. So, I square up the club face, I put my left thumb at about 1 or 1:30, I wrap my fingers around the club and I check this line, this gap between my thumb and my forefinger, and I make sure it's pointing up here. Next, I'm going to keep my thumb of my right hand next to my fingers. I'm not going to let there be any separation. I'm going to put it right next to my fingers, and when I do this, there is a small gap between the heel pad of my thumb and the heel pad of my pinky. That gap has a valley in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that valley over my left thumb. I always want to grip with my right hand top to bottom. I never want to grip the bottom of the club and then roll my hands over. That's a mistake. A lot of bad golfers do that. Always grip down. So, thumb next to the fingers, cover the left thumb, and then you wrap your fingertips around the bottom of the club. As I do that, you'll notice that my right thumb now is just barely on the left side of center. So my left thumb was on the right side of center at about 1:30. I want my right thumb on the left side of center about 10:30, 11 o'clock. There's a little give in between either one of those, but that's basically where you want it to be. Your hands are close together. There are no gaps at all between my fingers or my hands at all. And then the last thing I need to do is need to decide what I want to do with this pinky finger. I want to either have it draped over the knuckle of my index finger, or I want to interlock it with my index finger. It doesn't matter, whichever one is more comfortable, but I can tell you this, most touring professionals now are starting to interlock. We don't know why, but for some reason that is maybe a little bit more efficient, helps them square the club face better. We don't know, but more guys are doing that on tour than ever before, so that's something to watch. Okay, so once again in the grip, left thumb, right side of center, about 1:30. Put the thumb next to the fingers, cover the right thumb with that gap between the heel pads, and then wrap our fingers around the club with our right thumb pointing at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. Now, if I have my hands on the club like this, it's much easier to release the golf club and generate both power and consistency. So, if your grip isn't right to begin with, we're already in trouble. We've already introduced swing flaws into our system. One thing we can do is, I'm going to go ahead and turn around to the camera, is when we look down at our hands, if the club face is pointing straight up in the air, my hands should be married together very, very simply. There's just no gaps. If I open my fingers of both of my hands, I cannot see either palms. I'm looking down at the top of my hands. If you have your hands on the club incorrectly and you open the fingers of either hand and you can see the insides of your hands or fingers, that means you have your hands on the club improperly. Okay, so the best thing to do when you're changing a grip, the easiest thing I can do is give you a homework assignment. Take a golf club home, sit in front of the TV, watch a baseball game, a basketball game, set the club so the toes pointing straight up in the air, put your left thumb just on right side of center, cover that left thumb, wrap your fingers. Do it again, take your hands off and on the club. The more you put your hands on and off the club, the more natural that grip will feel to you. It'll feel goofy at first, probably because you're already doing it wrong, but once you do this enough times, it'll start to feel better for you, and you'll start gripping the club properly, which will then allow you to swing the golf club properly.